So this is why from source, from your source itself, well, lack doesn't really exist. And once you really get that, then whatever arises, whatever appears in your aware space, then you know that, well, that is not who I am. Thus, just by being, just by being, just by being this aware space, which is the all-knowing in itself, you're giving opportunity to liberate the individual self. You're giving opportunity, let's turn it around, for the individual self to evolve, to mature, to grow. Yeah, from the individual self's point of view, you are evolving, expanding, maturing, and growing. But from the point of view of your awareness, when nothing is really happening, you are already that. You are already abundant. You are already bliss. That's your nature. You are already boundless, open, aware being. It's your nature. That is why it is so essential for us to remember that. That is why it's so important to know thyself. Consider this meeting as an invitation to liberate yourself from any unnecessary suffering. Unnecessary suffering you believe about yourself, which is lacking something of any kind. This unnecessary suffering because of a certain belief that I lack this or that. Into the opportunity to realize in the present now that you are all knowing, and that you are abundant, because that is your nature. You are source. So the intention of this meeting is to close any gaps that reside in a lack of, is to close the gaps into the instance of the all-knowing of your nature. So if we come to the root cause of all suffering, we come to realize that this root cause is a certain degree of distance, a certain degree of distance from our all-knowing source nature. So this is really different for everyone, depending where one is at within themselves. And we can inquire and investigate where we're at in this now, so that we can bring more awareness on that which is lacking awareness. That which is lacking awareness is experienced as lack. The lack of awareness can also be seen as ignorance. It is something that lacks our seeing. And what lacks our seeing lacks understanding. So many times some things are happening in our lives and we don't understand why it's happening. We don't quite get it, or there is a blind spot of not fully understanding what it is that we are going through and why is it still happening, and whatever story is being created in our life's experience. So this is why, because your true nature, since it's already all-knowing in its nature, it is impossible to have lack. Impossible. Because your nature, your essence is all-knowing. What I mean by all-knowing, it is not the knowledge you have gained from your education. It is not the knowledge you have gained from your past life experiences. It's not the knowledge that you've read from the books or the movies you've watched or anything of that kind. So it is pretty clear to understand that the nature of your being is all-knowing, and it has nothing to do with past, present, or future. It's not any accumulated memory that creates the knowledge. The all-knowing is prior to all of that, prior to past experiences, present or future. So it is not something that you have gained. It is not that all-knowing that we are speaking of right now. It is the essence of your nature, which is all-knowing, which is open, aware, seeing itself. And within your nature, there can't exist even any form of lack. So when this can be really, really digested, and it is absolutely clear within you, then a question arises. Then who is the one experiencing all the suffering? Who is the one experiencing all the realities of lack? Who is that one? And that comes to the conclusion that it is the individual self that carries that sense, that feeling of lack. It is the individual self through what this individual self has been through since the birth, through your childhood times, through this society and all that you have received, the imprints of life, the collective consciousness too holds these frequencies of lack. So in one individual self to another, this might vary, the circumstances and beliefs might vary. Maybe for one, having struggles because they might experience a lot of lack of love, a lack of connection, a lack of intimacy. Or for another, it could manifest as a lack of health, some lack of wealth even. So in any way or another, the root cause of lack streams into various forms, whether it's love, whether it's wealth, whether it's stability and security, whether it's lack of expression, whether it's lack of sight and seeing and vision. See, it basically rises from our root. Lack rises from the root. And as it rises from the root, according to you specifically, according to the individual self that you still carry and subscribe to, according to that, the substance of lack rises through this individual self, and it expresses out through one of your chakras. Yeah, it expresses out through one of the chakras, and thus, because it is a part of the individuality, and thus, because there is a degree of belief in that, it becomes a trap and a loop and like a self-locking mechanism that continues to play out through the individual self alone. This is really important to understand. It is only through the individual self alone, because of a certain degree of belief, it loops in itself and it functions. It plays out in one way or another. And thus we all know what lack is. We have lived on this planet Earth, in a time where lack is and has been experienced in so many ways. Thus, the the core lack actually goes even deeper than lack of security, maybe lack of love and intimacy, or lack of wealth and health. It goes even deeper than that. It's much, much, much more ingrained than that. And if you dive deeper into this energy of lack, we come to see that the actual root cause of it all, it is the lack of our aware being. Yeah, the distance and the lack of knowing the all knowing itself. And that is when you go right straight into the core. Because many times people waste so much time with, going through so many cycles and circles with so much effort, living in such a dualistic reality, trying to feel fulfilled. Yeah, trying to feel fulfilled and flip-flopping from lack to fulfillment, and then back to lack, and then some momentary experience of fulfillment again. And we end up living a life of such a great effort to have those instances, those moments, to feel fulfilled, to feel whole, to feel complete. But you all know by now that it comes, but it goes. That sense of completeness, that sense of wholeness, that sense of fulfillment, it flips again back to lack. And the deeper you go, the higher you expose and become in your higher consciousness, you will still see lack play out. You just become more aware of more subtleties of how this root cause of all had turned out how to be. So why? Well, this brings us to the conclusion to realize that there is only one way through this trap, through this bondage. There's only one way. And that one way is to know the all-knowing, to know source, to know yourself as like whom you really are. That is the only way, the only and real direct way. Because otherwise, you can spend a whole lifetime in a struggle, which you already know it creates so much effort and suffering to gain those moments of fulfillment. And so the wisest way is know thyself. Because when you know thyself, everything else starts to lose its power. Those repeating traps playing themselves, they'll start breaking down, dismantling. Because not only you are realizing the all-knowing, the source itself within you, but that too actually supports the dismantling of these functions. Because the more you settle and abide in the all-knowing, the more this awareness, you know, infuses into the individuality, infuses into the constructs, into the beliefs. It shines the light of your awareness upon that which seems to be lack. And once the light of your seeing, of your true aware being shines and infuses into what seems to appear as lack, what happens when it's lit up, when it's infused in source? What happens? It actually disappears. It actually disappears. So if it disappears into nothing, it just like disintegrates. That is well, freedom, isn't it? It's freeing yourself from that bondage or misidentification with something that you're actually not. Wow. So this is why from your source itself, well, lack doesn't really exist. And once you really get that, then whatever arises, whatever appears in your aware space, then you know that, well, that is not who I am. Thus, just by being this aware space, which is the all-knowing in itself, you're giving opportunity to liberate the individual self. You're giving opportunity, let's turn it around, for the individual self to evolve, to mature, to grow. Yeah, from the individual self's point of view, you are evolving, expanding, maturing, and growing. But from the point of view of your awareness, when nothing is really happening, you are already that. You are already abundant. You are already bliss. That's your nature. You are already boundless, open, aware being. It's your nature. That is why it is so essential for us to remember that. That is why it's so important. to know thyself. So that once that is clear, then anything else that appears in your space, well, then you'll have much more compassion. You can embrace even lack if it appears in your space, because you can very clearly see it as what it is. You will have such clarity because that's what awareness gives us, the clear seeing of knowing what is. So, this way of seeing and being, and as you deepen in presence, as you deepen and become more and more familiar with your presence and beingness, you start accessing this non-dual life. Yeah? And non-duality, it, 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 it has its degrees, its levels, its subtleness, all the way to full consciousness. That is all non-dual being. And non-dual being is not a philosophy or some kind of theory. It is a state of your being that can become ever more subtle and light. And thus, from the state of being, you don't perceive the reality from a two-way stream, from a dual perspective. It is not two. Non-duality is not two. It is one. It is perceiving reality from the one. As it is prior, closer, deeper than when the life and energy splits into opposition, into opposing forces of duality. So when you understand this, you come to realize that this effort, this struggle and suffering, it creates, a certain force of wanting to feel fulfilled. Thus, when fulfillment is not there, what is present is lack. And that is a play of duality. So going before that, prior to that, is the actual seeing from the one. And seeing from the one, already no lack is existing already. So lack exists because of duality. And this is why sometimes we say it's good to recognize what you are not, so that you can know more of who you really are. But also the other way around works pretty well too. Abide in the all-knowing, abide in source, as source. familiarize with that, be that, and allow everything else, any subject, object, to infuse in the light of your awareness. And from which way you look at this view, we come to realize that in between there is like stuff. There is the distance or the gap. And with meditation, you start to close those gaps, become closer, closer and closer to you. And the closer you are, even as you infuse, become that source itself, you start to realize that this abundance of all is a part. It's as a quality of the nature, the essence itself.